Okay. So again, tonight's topic is this idea of merit that we hear a lot about in the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism that we practice here at this center, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can, but nonetheless we will talk about some of the ideas and things that are involved in this tradition. But really this whole concept of merit revolves around the deeper concept that the Buddha taught, which is so fundamental to everything that is kind of the core of his teachings to a large degree, which is the concept of karma. When we use this word merit, we're not, I think the first time I heard it as a kid, it was like the idea of getting extra merit, or merit being like gold stars or merit badges in Boy Scouts. Like you live up to a certain potential and then you're recognized for that. Well, there's no recognition from somewhere else that this merit comes from. In Buddhist terms, merit comes from our own minds. And that's because karma comes from our own minds. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the concept of karma, which of course again is explored in a lot of the teachings that are done here and Discovering Buddhism, that's starting next week, next Thursday. There's eventually a module on karma, but I think it even gets discussed in the first module on mind and its potential, because in Buddhist terms everything starts from the mind. And by the mind we don't mean the brain, this physical matter that we have. We mean this awareness, this consciousness that is continually arising moment after moment. It's better to think of it as a continuity or a stream. Well, what the Buddha is saying by the concept of karma is that everything we do with our minds, and then of course our minds manifest in terms of our speech, and then our physical actions, how we are physically in the world, all of these are what we mean by karma. Karma being this active movement of the mind or of our body and speech in a particular direction. It's very hard to kind of put a label on what we mean by karma other than the word itself. It literally translates to action. And it means the action, the movement of the mind, body, speech that creates a seed, a potential for something to ripen in the future. Of course, in the West, we've got to know this term karma, even though it was primarily taught in Eastern traditions, including Hinduism as well as Buddhism. But karma isn't quite as simple as what we make it out in the West. It's a very complex mechanism by which everything that we experience is wrapped up in karma. So the Buddha doesn't stop it. I think when we talk about karma generally, I remember there was that really kind of funny show called My Name is Earl. I don't know how many of you saw My Name is Earl. About this guy who has all this bad luck. In the very first episode, he gets hit by a car, ends up in the hospital, but he's had all this other stuff. He had a winning lottery ticket, but then the ticket went flying in the wind when he got hit by the car or something. I don't know. It was all this a whole bunch of what we would normally in the world just simply call bad luck. Well, he ends up in the hospital, and I think it's Carson Daly or something's on the TV talking about his life and how he started tuning into karma. And he says two very simple statements. He says, if you do good things happen to you. If you do bad things happen to you. Well, there's some of that essence or seed to karma, but it doesn't translate quite that directly in terms of, that if I were to lie to Anthony, for example, that then 5 months down the road, Anthony's going to lie to me or something. I mean, there can be those sorts of results of our karma, but there can be many, many other results of our karma. Because karma isn't just ripening into a particular type of experience that is similar to what I did. It also has an effect on the environment that I live in. It has an effect on my mind in terms of my propensity to lie, for example. It also has an effect on even where I'm reborn, potentially, depending upon the strength of that karma. Because in Buddhism, there's the idea that mind continues on. Because mind is this non-material component of our being, this awareness, it goes back without any beginning and goes forward without any end. So we will continue to go from life to life, and karma is what shapes those lives, what determines where we end up and what sorts of situations we're in and so on. So karma is operative at pretty much every level of our being. When you start meditating on karma, you sort of realize that it's pretty vast in terms of its power, but nonetheless, we're not kind of personifying it and making it something outside of ourselves as if it's some sort of punitive or rewarding agent that bestows upon us either, some horrible experience or some delightful experience. Rather, this is the mechanism by which we are creating our own experiences. which is a very empowering concept. When I first started teaching on karma, I used the analogy that it's the teachings to help you to get into the driver's seat so that you can, go where you want to go. But then I realized that we've always been in the driver's seat. We just didn't know we were driving. We didn't know even maybe how to drive necessarily. But we were just doing what we were doing, and we're taking ourselves all over the place, but no real rhyme or reason to it. When we learn the teachings on karma, then we have all the rules of the road defined for us. We know exactly how to go about using this life very meaningfully, very productively. So we generally classify karma, even though I was talking about, good things, bad things, we do generally tend to classify it in terms of those karmas, those actions that are skillful and bring about good results in our lives, what we call happiness. And then we have those that are not so skillful, that bring about suffering results. And merit, this concept of merit, is really just tied up in those positive ones, those very skillful, wholesome actions that we engage in. But with the particular orientation in this tradition, and particularly around the store, the accumulation of merit that we need in order to accomplish more long-lasting goals. So this is where I need to go and explain a little bit in terms of what the goal of Buddhist practice is on a both temporal basis as well as a more ultimate basis. But karma is the agent by which we are able to accomplish anything that we want. So let me do a few more examples on karma before we go on to talk a bit more about Buddhist goals and that, and how merit is involved in that. So anything that we want to achieve in our life, we can say that karma is the main thing that produces that. But it's nonetheless not just an individual thing that is only the only thing involved in producing that result. Because there are many other factors. This is why we frequently use the term causes and conditions. Everything arising on the basis of a whole variety of causes and conditions. So let's use the example of if you're employed and have a good salary and you've got a lot of money coming in through your work. You may sit there and look at it and look at the money in your bank account and think, oh, this is because I have this good employer and this good job, and yes, I trained myself to be really good at that job and really put my effort into it, but you don't think that your karma is involved in that at all, because it's a matter of you showing up to the job, doing the work, and your employer continuing to give you the paycheck every week or 2 weeks or month or whenever they pay you. Well, this is true that to some degree those are factors that are involved in that. But the Buddha would say that the reason why you're making the living that you are, the reason why you have the resources that you have, is actually due to your karma of generosity in the past. That by your giving of resources and happily sharing what you have with others, you've created the causes to receive resources. It's a very simple concept at the level of generosity. But most of us, nonetheless, there are many people in the world who go to job after job after job and they are never making any headway, or maybe they try to run their own business and everything goes wrong. They just can't seem to get it all together. They can't seem to have everything ripen into that good result. Well, somebody else who has better karma, in a sense, who's got all the seeds planted for that to succeed, could have a very different experience. So it's not just all these external things that are involved in creating our temporary conditions of resources in our life or good health or whatever else. It's also a matter of us having the karma for that, the merit for that. So in Buddhist terms, when we look at somebody who does have a good job, who's getting this good pay, who's seemingly very well off in terms of their financial situation, we would understand that there's good karma they created that has ripened into that. But of course, once that's ripened into that, then that seed's exhausted. So once more, it becomes a matter of needing to continue to do those things that produce those types of results if we want to continue to have those results in our life. This is a key thing about merit and karma as well, is to understand that we are completely in the driver's seat then if we want to continue to go to the places we want to go to in terms of having good things in our lives and having the ability to have more leisure in our lives, to use this life in deeper ways spiritually and what have you. We need to create the causes for that. And we need to avoid creating the causes that will drive us down that road of having not so much good fortune, that where we're struggling all the time and we maybe are not able to use this life as well for deeper spiritual practice. So the concept of paying attention to our good karma or our merit is very much embedded in those temporal things that we have in our lives. But once more, we have to go back to that idea of why do we want good things in our lives on a temporal basis? Not so that we can just enjoy this life, because this life is like a flash of lightning in the dark. It'll be over before we know it. And if all we've done is just utilized and used up all this good karma and not created anything to sustain it into the future, well, then we're not going to be in a better situation when we die compared to when we came into this life. But if we die with knowing that we've used this life well, then we can go on to attain even more ultimate results. So at this point, let me introduce this idea then that we could say that we have temporal results that are achieved through merit or through good karma, in particular because we're going to focus on that side of it. We also have the results that come about through the negative karma, the unskillful karma, which are in the nature of suffering, which once more we need to avoid. But tonight's topic isn't how to avoid creating all those negative things. It's more how do we make sure we create the positive things. So temporal results that we get are definitely a product of our merit, of our karma, our good karma. But even the more ultimate results are going to be attained on the basis of that. So what do we mean by these more ultimate results? An ultimate result is something that will last, that is not transitory. This human life is very transitory. It lasts for the duration of when you're born till when this life ceases, and then it's over, it's gone, and then you go on to another rebirth, and you can hopefully have a good chain of those, a continuity of those, so that you can continue to be in relatively good situations and continue to use your life well. But you get those temporal results, so you can get to the ultimate results. The ultimate results are sometimes called definite goodness or certain goodness, meaning that there's a certainty to once you attain them, you will continue to experience that goodness. So these results are usually defined as twofold. One is the idea of one's own liberation, or what we call nirvana, which is that state where we have removed everything that's keeping us bound up in this cycle of going from life to life. It is our own karma that is propelling us from life to life, albeit maybe good karma that took us into this human life. It's still being under the control of those factors, continuing to experience this round of existence, cyclic existence as it's called. So liberation, or nirvana, is the first ultimate result that one could attain on the basis of using this life and developing the requisite merit as well as wisdom, which we'll talk about shortly. But the idea is that we definitely need some positive force behind that. We need good karma behind that as well. But then the second result is this result of enlightenment that we talked about in our motivation tonight. Enlightenment, we usually use that to distinguish from liberation, enlightenment being full Buddhahood. And what the Buddha says is essentially every one of us, every single being, by virtue of having a mind, has the potential to achieve enlightenment. This is the topic of the first module of Discovering Buddhism that'll start next Thursday. Mind and its potential. That every one of us has the ability to achieve enlightenment. That, as I said earlier, the Buddha, these figures that represent the Buddha up here, were beings just like us at some point, with our crazy minds and our ways of going about living our lives and being caught up in things and what have you. Buddhas were beings just like us. They had a connection with the teachings, developed those teachings in their own minds to the degree where they've become fully enlightened. So Buddhas aren't some sort of divine being that is outside of the scope of our experience, but rather represents our own potential that every one of us can achieve. So to achieve that state in particular does require, they say, quite an accumulation of merit, quite a lot of positive potential. Because it's a pretty major result. It's something that is not, we're not trying to discourage anybody, but there's a lot of difficulty in achieving this. It does require a lot of effort and a lot of dedication. So these kind of three different results we could talk about. The temporal results, which are having a good life, having good things in one's life, having the resources that one needs. This is a good place to start, to recognize that we need to create some positive potential for that. We need to be mindful of creating that in our lives, not just using it all up. But then the two other more ultimate results of liberation and enlightenment are also definitely a product of our positive potential. So this is one half of the equation, and we're going to focus, as I said, mostly on that in terms of merit. The other half of the equation is what we call wisdom, and frequently the analogy is used of a bird. So a bird has two wings, right? If you had a bird with one wing, it couldn't fly. It's kind of sad if you've ever seen a bird with an injured wing or just one wing. They can't get up off the ground. They need both wings to fly to their destination. So when we talk about Buddhahood or enlightenment, we often use the idea that you do need both wings, but you need both wings even for liberation. You don't need both wings for just a good rebirth, but you definitely need to have some amount of merit or this positive potential that is driven by your good intentions, your compassion, your loving kindness, your generosity, all these kinds of positive states of mind. But you also need the wing of what we call wisdom. Lama Zopa Rinpoche these days, who's our spiritual director, he's over there to the right of the sitting Buddha here. Lama Zopa often talks about both of these as merit. He's using this term now, calling it the merit of virtue and the merit of wisdom. Well, traditionally, when we talk about merit, we're mostly talking about this type of merit of virtue. But we could say, to some degree, we're also talking about the positive potential we create through our wisdom. But why is wisdom so crucial? Again, I won't be going into that in a whole lot of detail tonight, but it's important to understand that these work in tandem. The degree to which we create this positive potential over here through our virtue, through our store of merit, influences our ability to cultivate deeper and deeper wisdom. Well, wisdom is essential because the Buddha says what's keeping us caught up in this cycle of existence and what's keeping us from being fully enlightened like the Buddha are these mistaken ideas we have in our minds. This ignorance that is at the root of all of our suffering. So I've touched on this a number of nights. Even on Tuesday night we talked about this, the wisdom we need to cultivate to counteract that ignorance and to eventually eliminate that ignorance. And this is a real principal teaching of Buddhism as well, and all the traditions teach some measure of that wisdom that needs to accompany this meritorious action in order to get to liberation, in order to get to Buddhahood. So just know that there's some other dimensions of the path to enlightenment and to liberation that I won't be touching on tonight, but it's very important to understand that these two do work in tandem. That there are many people who will, get frustrated at their inability to discern some of the teachings of the Buddha, particularly this wisdom of emptiness, as it's called, that helps us to counteract our ignorance, but don't recognize that that's also contingent upon having a good store of merit. Lama Tsongkhapa himself, who's depicted in the tanka behind Tracy there, the one with the yellow hat. We're often called the yellow hat sect of Tibetan Buddhism because of this yellow hat that he wore. Lama Tsongkhapa is renowned for having generated very deep realizations on the wisdom path, but he also required engaging in a lot of these practices that help to increase his merit in order to be able to achieve that realization. It's said that he did all these what are called mandala offerings, which are these vast offerings. There's a rock in Tibet where he would do this. He'd use this rock as his platform for building this symbolic structure that's like offering the whole universe. And so the rock itself was quite rough when he started. You have to rub it 3 times clockwise, 3 times counterclockwise, which must have been just horrible on his skin. But he did this to, create these mandala offerings. He did millions of them. Anyway, I'm just pointing out as an example that even he, who had incredible insight, incredible wisdom, still needed to accumulate merit to be able to advance that wisdom to the degree where he was able to achieve these results. Because we can say wisdom is the main thing by which we achieve liberation or enlightenment, but without the fuel in the tank, if you will, without putting in all the positive energy and potential that is our accumulation of merit, we can't get to these goals. So this is a very different understanding than what we have in our culture. I mean, we often think that I'm just going to plow right through kind of the wisdom wing in our lives. I'm just going to, if I know everything and do everything right, I'm going to have instant success. And we don't think about kind of these positive dimensions to it that need to also be there. So the Buddha is emphasizing in this concept of merit when he talks about it, really this idea that we do need that. We need that for all 3 of these results, our temporal well-being as well as the more ultimate results. So what I'd like to mostly focus on tonight is this idea of how do we create the most positive potential then. If we're talking about creating actions, karma, engaging in things mentally, physically, verbally, that will help us on our path, whether we're just seeking temporal good results or whether we want those more ultimate results, as many of you in the room, do aim to achieve through your practice. How do we make sure that we're doing that in the best way so that we get what we're seeking and also have less obstacles on our path, less things that get in the way? Because the more merit we create, in a sense, the smoother the ride, the better it will be for ourselves. Any questions up to this point before I go on? Yeah, Ralph.
So to the last point, I started to think of wisdom as training the mind, and virtue as action. So we have action and we have thinking and doing, essentially. Is there accuracy in that?
Well, to some degree, but because karma is primarily mental, when we talk about the virtue, that meritorious element that needs to be there, that's also mind. But it does manifest in terms of speech and in terms of physical action. So it's not to say it's solely mind, but maybe we could say it's a more active component as opposed to over here it being more penetrative. But nonetheless, we have to work very much with our minds over here too on the wisdom wing. We have to actually challenge our minds to continue to advance it. So I know it'd be hard to just make that clear delineation. Because again, everything that the Buddha is talking about is really our mind. So there's different components in terms of when I'm trying to generate wisdom. It's when I'm looking at the teachings, analyzing them, trying to develop my deeper penetration into them, insight into them. When I'm over here, I can unite that with some element of wisdom, but I'm mostly trying to engage in those things that are about more wholesome states of mind and more wholesome actions that follow from that. So this is more of what we might call even the compassion wing. Frequently that's talked about in that way, the wing of compassion and the wing of wisdom, because this is the instrument by which we cultivate that deeper good-heartedness that is behind all of our positive actions.
And one other one with respect to free agency. So we're talking about karma, planting karmic seeds, and
right.
Our experiences in our present human existence coming about as the ripening of these karmic seeds.
Okay.
It causes the conditions for these seeds to ripen, right? So let's say I'm living in poverty, and causes some conditions, seeds ripening, right? This is my human existence.
Right.
Do I have any free agency to have some effect on that? I mean, obviously,
Sure.
it seems like in this world I could do that. I could somehow change that. So would that also then be in the karmic scheme of things as well? But you understand where I'm confused?
I think I'm getting where you're going to with this, Ralph. So if we talk about free agency, or to what extent do we have an ability to change our situation? I mean, the Buddha says absolutely we have a lot of potential to change our situation. There's a few little caveats in there though. First of all, we have to be aware of that instrument by which we can change it. And this is why, again, in our worldly knowledge and the way that people work in the world in general, they don't have this concept. They don't have the understanding that their predicament of being poor, for example, is a product of these specific actions that they've done that have ripened into not having resources, through their not having been more miserly with their resources, not having shared them, being even perhaps stealing from others, and all of this in the past. Now, again, we don't have that knowledge. We're born into this life not being aware of all the karma we've created in our prior lives. So if you came in with like a little report, every person that was born, you had like a little statement of all the things that you did in the past and all the good things, negative things, what have you, we'd have some idea what we're working with. But everyone has their own little stuff that's been the creation of their own minds, that when they come into this life, although there's a very good karma in terms of being born human, because this is said to be the ripening of a very positive potential that we've created, the conditions may not be there to sustain that human life in ways that would be really useful. So there may be a lack of resources or bad health or whatever the case might be. Now, given that that has ripened into that situation, this is also one of the caveats, is that it's very hard. Geshe Soka, in his commentary on the Lamrim Chenmo, talks about the difficulty of changing a karma that's already ripened. It can be changed, but it's very, very difficult to do. Particularly when it's something like, some physical illness or something that has full flourishing come into our our state of existence. The medicine may be there for us to be able to work with that and to make that more, we can utilize this life still in the midst of that illness. But nonetheless, for something to be completely removed is sometimes quite difficult. No, not impossible, but this is, again, just one of the caveats. So, given that we have a knowledge that we are in the driver's seat and can make concrete decisions about our lives and what to do, which again most people don't have, given that some things are very hard to overcome once they've ripened, once they've come into our lives, we still can do a lot in terms of working with our own situation and understanding at least how to rectify things going forward so that we don't have similar things happening in future lives, but also then to do what we can to ameliorate any of the suffering and difficulty we have from those through a lot of the powerful actions we're going to talk about tonight. Some of these, they say, actually can ripen in this very life, can change one situation in this very life. A lot of karma doesn't ripen until next lifetime, lifetimes beyond that. Were you going to say something, Lama?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said, from my understanding, from the Buddha's pith instructions, yes, you can stop suffering, and that's the Four Noble Truths.
Sure,
basically, when you get to the Third Noble Truth, if you get even that far, only after reaching that, and you're in the fourth, you're truly on the Mahayana path, because you have to, at that point, from the teachings that I have, and I know, not that I know, but the merit you achieve to understand the emptiness of wisdom, the emptiness of, like, this body. So I didn't take it, when I had heard these teachings, and from Geshe Sopo also, that even if you have an illness, was to get rid of the actual body illness, was to get rid of the your mind suffering with, like, learning to like your problems. To like
Right.
That's empty.
Yeah.
Really.
And I think what you said is fine. The jumping to that, I was mostly trying to deal with Ralph's question, which the way I heard it, and I'm not sure, is not necessarily this more ultimate result, but even in terms of our daily life and an understanding of karma, and merit, and how would we utilize that? Can we ameliorate in any way the difficulties that we're having in our lives, such as poverty, such as illness, such as whatever? And absolutely, this is the whole gist of what the Buddha taught, is what you're talking about, Lama, in terms of the Four Noble Truths and the reality that we can be free of all of it. But I would say even, yes, you can be free of the physical element, you can be free of everything by achieving liberation or enlightenment. That's the whole point. It really is to the deeper practice of the teachings. But just at the level of understanding that our situation is a product of our past actions. Whatever we are experiencing is something we've created. Doesn't mean we're horrible people, doesn't mean that we should have all this incredible guilt about what we've created if it is a state of poverty or there is something where we're dealing with various issues. Rather to look at that as, again, like I've said in the previous teachings, as something we can learn from, something we can actually see, okay, I've created the causes for this, at least to learn not to create the causes again, at least to say, okay, how do I make sure that I'm making decisions that are contrary to that going forward, that will keep those sorts of things from arising. That will help you avoid the first result, of having lives that are not so good, lives that are involved in more suffering. So you can get more temporal benefit. So that's the idea of working at the initial level with karma. If you're going to go on, as Lama was talking about, and also become liberated from your suffering, or achieve enlightenment, which is even beyond your own liberation, because again, you'll be able to help others to do this work. That's the whole goal of Buddhahood. Then, absolutely, that is something that we can also do in the midst of that. It's not to say that we should just be focused on this life.
Either way, I have nothing to lose by generating as much merit as possible.
Exactly. But this is why what we're going to talk about tonight in terms of some of the ways that we generate the best merit is actually to not have the merit that's just focused on this life at all, because that's not really that meritorious. But rather even not just focused on our next life, but rather one that is focused on not even liberation, but enlightenment. This is how we create the most merit. So that whenever we're dealing with anything in our lives, we think as big as we can, we act as big as we can, and then our merit will be as big as it can get. So I don't know, we'll get on some of what we talked about, I think will be touched on as we go through these 4 things. What I want to spend most of the time talking about are these 4 factors, if you will, or I guess they are called 4 powers, but they are 4 things that really contribute to the weight of our karma in terms of, particularly when we talk about this merit or this positive potential that we're trying to create. And the reason why I bring them up is because those 4 things can have a great bearing on how much of this store of merit we're able to accumulate in this life. So the very first one is called the power of the intention or the attitude, and this is perhaps the most important because once more, everything starts with our minds. So, what do you think is I already kind of let the cat out of the bag earlier, but what do you think is the most powerful intention or attitude to have behind your actions? Anybody?
Good. This is some of it. Enlightened for the sake of all.
Good. To become enlightened for the sake of all beings, which is, as Tracy was saying, this is to have a good motivation, a positive. This is the most positive motivation you can have. Again, I don't know all spiritual traditions. I grew up Catholic, and I've had some encounters with some other traditions to some degree, but I've never heard this mind replicated in any other spiritual tradition. Not to say that maybe there are other traditions where people want to be. Certainly we have many spiritual people from a lot of other traditions that embody that sort of selfless giving to others and being involved in the welfare of others. But in Buddhism, what we're talking about is that full development of our being, that setting our goal on achieving the welfare of all other beings, being dedicated to helping every one of them to be free from suffering, to achieve happiness to the greatest degree. And we're doing that within the understanding that we have to become qualified to do that. We have to actually work on ourselves to be able to help others in that way. So this gets into a little bit more of an explanation of that sort of final result of Buddhahood that I mentioned earlier and what's really all entailed in that. When we talk about Buddhahood, we are talking about the fulfillment of 2 levels of potential. One of them is the fulfillment of your own welfare, which is, as I said in the motivation tonight, this is why His Holiness says this is actually what we mean by being wisely selfish, is recognizing that if we're dedicated to this goal of Buddhahood, one component of it is that you will actually achieve your greatest welfare. And what does your greatest welfare look like? Essentially, it comes down to what we mean by this term Dharmakaya, or the truth body of a Buddha. The truth body, or that Dharmakaya component of a Buddha, is the full development of your wisdom to the degree where your mind has removed everything that will cause you any level of suffering or obscure your mind in any way. So you develop your mind fully. This is kind of the culmination of your own welfare. And to do that is primarily this wing of wisdom, this, that I mentioned earlier, that helps you to remove everything that keeps you caught up in your own suffering and keeps you from being fully awakened, fully enlightened. So there's that component of what we mean by Buddhahood. And that's an important one to have, right? Because without that full blossoming of our awareness, that full culmination of our wisdom, we lack the ability to know how best to benefit others. But then we need a way to benefit others, which is what is frequently called the Rupakaya, or the form bodies of a Buddha. So the form bodies of a Buddha are the main thing that is the product of our merit. Why? Because that positive karma, by being generated with this motivation to become a Buddha, creates the causes for us to eventually be able to appear in forms to help them. So when we talk about the state of Buddhahood, the state of Buddhahood is both of those things coming together. The full development of our own potential, that is our own minds, fully awakened, omniscient, and then the culmination of our dedication to the welfare of others, which appears then in the form of beings that can interact with others, help them on their path, teach them on their path. Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha whose teachings we follow, is said to have been one of those emanations, one of those form bodies. So this enlightened mind appears in enlightened forms, in forms that help others. They don't always look like a Buddha. And they actually say Buddhas can appear in any form to help us. It gets a little mystical here, a little woo-woo, as one of my students says back in New Mexico. But this is the power of fully developing our minds along with the meritorious path that is complementing it, that is driven by this compassionate wish to benefit others. So that when you achieve Buddhahood, your mind crosses over into that omniscient state, and you immediately are able to help others by appearing in whatever form is useful for them. So to some you may appear as an animal, to some you may appear as a bridge, to some you may appear as a rock, to some you may appear as a teacher, to some you may appear as a fully enlightened being, depending upon the karma of that being, depending upon what they can have access to. So when we start moving towards this goal of achieving our enlightenment, which is the fulfillment of our own potential, where we'll be able to be dedicated to the fulfillment of the welfare of others, this is the most powerful motivation that we can have. As I said, I've never encountered this in any other tradition. I don't know, maybe it does exist in some other traditions that I'm not aware of. But it's a pretty far-reaching goal. They say it's, of course, the highest goal. It's the highest potential that every one of us has, is to be able to ripen our own minds to that degree, to where we can help to ripen the minds of others. Of course, it involves then being infused with compassion and love for all those beings, enlarging all of that. And of course, in Buddhism, we learn many techniques to do that. So going back to this idea of this very first power, what makes our actions most powerful is when we have that intention, even if it's the smallest action we can imagine. Say you were to just take one little bird seed and you put it out on your porch so that one bird could have that one little morsel of food. But you did it with bodhicitta motivation, with this mind that wants to become a Buddha for the sake of others. It's as if you are feeding scores of seeds to scores of beings, to infinite beings, because your mind is based on becoming enlightened for the sake of all beings. This mind of bodhicitta has a very powerful basis. It's not just, achieving some temporary welfare for them. It's achieving your ultimate goal so that you can bring them all to that ultimate goal, and it's doing it on the basis of all beings. So even if it's a simple action of one little morsel of food for one animal, that's incredibly powerful when it's done with bodhicitta. So imagine what it is if you feed like a whole bird seed, what do they call them, like a feeder or whatever. You fill that entire thing, and you have that strong motivation of feeding all the birds that come to partake of that with bodhicitta. So you've increased your merit tremendously if it's, countless other seeds that you're offering with that same mind of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta has this ability to transform our actions because everything starts with our minds. If we have that most far-reaching goal of Buddhahood, that we want to benefit each and every single sentient being, which again, as I mentioned, we got techniques we use in Buddhism to help train in that much compassion and love, so that it even extends to the difficult people in our lives, even extends to political figures who are doing things we don't like, and who we, have some feelings of disapproval towards. If we can open our hearts to wanting them to achieve their potential, to become truly happy, to be free from suffering, by generating that mind of bodhicitta that encompasses all beings, then we have this amazingly powerful open heart, good heart, that we bring to all of our actions. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, says, that this is the way we can collect infinite merit. How you can collect infinite positive potential is by holding bodhicitta in mind as frequently as possible. So to do this, of course, we start our day with some meditation on bodhicitta. Rinpoche has this wonderful little practice now that I think is freely available through FPMT, the daily, the How to Transform a Life of Suffering into Happiness or something, I think is what it's called. And it starts off with a wonderful prayer that helps you review the Lam Rim, the stages of the path, and then talks about some of these practices of dedicating yourself to the welfare of others. So that you think, may this body only be a benefit to others, may everything I do be infused with that. And you start your day off with that motivation. And then as frequently as you can throughout that day, you try to recall that motivation. Try to think, I'm writing this email for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm, eating my lunch for the sake of all sentient beings so they can all achieve enlightenment. We can actually infuse even our kind of mundane actions, our daily actions that don't seem spiritual at all, with that motivation. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago when we went through the one course on the joy of letting go. Actually, it's in your prayer book here too. We might as well go ahead and point it out while I'm talking about it. In the Everyday Dharma section, page 209, here it's called Thought Training for Everyday Practice. But essentially this is what Rinpoche these days calls bodhicitta mindfulness. You know, you even see that first line in the text here. It says, with all actions we should cause bodhicitta to arise in our minds as in the following examples. So it gives over the next 4 pages all these examples of different things that we do frequently in our lives, like going in and out of a room, opening a door, closing a door, washing yourself, sweeping, sitting down, getting up, whatever. As you page through, you can see all these various things, and it's saying when you do those actions, don't just sit there and have your ordinary mind that's just thinking about your own pleasure or thinking about nothing. I mean, how much of our day do we just zone out and not have any thoughts? And bring some virtue into that. Bring some positive thought into that. So, for example, that first one, you go into a temple or a room, think with bodhicitta, may all mother sentient beings be led into the city of nirvana. I am now leading them just as I enter this place. So you have this, and you don't have to use those exact words, just bring that thought to mind. Oh, I'm bringing all sentient beings into enlightenment right now, into nirvana. So, I pointed this out before. You can even go to page 212 and see the second to last one, which is even when you're in the toilet. It says there, when you excrete, think, may all sentient beings' delusions and mental defilements be removed, just as this is. You know, so even when you're going to the bathroom, you can make it into a practice of bodhicitta. It sounds a little crazy, but Rinpoche is giving us this advice, I think, because he knows that we can create incredible merit if we're holding those thoughts and transforming our everyday actions into something that has those thoughts behind it. And it makes sense, because that's how karma is created, that's how merit is created. And when we have this very powerful mind of bodhicitta, this is the way in which we can actually accomplish things quite easily, especially with that level of mindfulness. So again, not everybody's going to be able to immediately practice all of these, but just try to bring bodhicitta to mind in your own way, even as frequently as you can, in whatever thoughts help you to cultivate that. Any questions on that one? This idea of the power of our intention, our attitude.
No, I did have a thought though, and I have to go here, but you were talking about, or you had said, suggest that you really weren't familiar with another tradition that perhaps had the same type of
motivation there.
motivation.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Christianity, so much of the gospel is like metaphor, and so I was thinking specifically of the hands and feet of Christ, the hands and feet of Christ, in terms of your behaviors.
Right.
Taking the action of communion, taking in
Sure.
that type of embodiment for the benefit, again, of love and others. And so, I don't know, I mean, I often find that there are many parallels
Absolutely.
in the gospel and the teachings.
I mean, Christ himself was embodying that bodhisattva ideal in terms of saying, he was dying on the cross for the sake of all of our sins, for, to be a savior in that way. So there's something really noble about that. I guess my own experience around, people who, well, I, again, grew up Catholic. My father and mother were both Catholic. And my father, when he was quite ill, he died at 70. He had a lot of problems, a lot of health challenges. And I was doing a meditation with him that was this practice of Tonglen that we do frequently in Buddhism. That's all about taking away suffering, or at least feeling like through your suffering may others not suffer, and giving away your happiness to them. Anyway, I led him in this little meditation. And at the end of it, my father asked, he said, well, I'm still not clear why I want to do this. Why would I want to take on the suffering of others or have their suffering be lessened? And I said, well, don't you want to be as compassionate as Christ? I mean, don't you want to embody that in the spirit of what you're talking about? And he said, he can't possibly do that. He goes, I can't possibly do that. That's like outside of the realm of potential. And so that was the impression that I got from my own understanding of Christianity, is that we can be Christ-like in our behavior, but can we be Christ? Whereas in the Buddhist tradition, it's not being Buddha-like, it's you can be Buddha. Yes, right now we have to be like Buddhas and act like Buddhas as best as we can, but every one of us has the potential to be the same as Buddha, in essence to be the same as Christ. But in the Christian tradition, I don't know that people who practice Christianity, from my experience, think that they can be equivalent to Christ. Because Christ is part of the Godhead and transcends and is another dimension of being, whereas, the lowly humans are not quite capable of living up to that. So, but I agree with you. I think there's many of these things that help us to still embody so much of that, to live in Christ-like ways.
I'm no student of it, it's just that when I start to have some of these notions,
Yeah.
it makes me appreciate other
Absolutely.
traditions, so.
And every spiritual tradition, again, I never want to say anything that demeans in any way any spiritual traditions, and by saying that earlier, I wasn't trying to, say Buddhahood's superior or something, and we're the best. In fact, in the interfaith group that I sit with, we did a whole little dialogue on exclusivity, which is a big problem in spiritual traditions, is everybody thinking we got it right and you all got it wrong. This is not a helpful mind to have in a world where we have diverse spiritual traditions.
It also confuses me sometimes a little bit when I'm reading Lama Yeshe's literature. So I'm talking about God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, where's this God coming into play here? I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure because...
Yeah, because in Buddhism, we wouldn't say there's a creator God,
Right.
because karma is the vehicle of creation. And so we are the creators of our world. We are the creators of our experiences. God isn't pulling the strings or causing things to happen. But, and he'll talk about it, I think. Lama Yeshe, of course, he was renowned for having inserted himself into our culture quite skillfully, and so he was teaching Westerners and would often use those points of reference. But a lot of what we think of in terms of God in the theistic traditions isn't that far off the mark of what we mean by Buddha. It's just the idea that, again, we all have that same potential, which is very, again, for me, a wonderful way to live my life, to think that there's not something else that's bigger than me, other than my own Buddhahood, in a sense, that is a part of me right now that I can fully awaken, that I can achieve that same state. Yeah.
I grew up studying Judaism, and it's way different than Christianity.
Yeah.
When there's no sin, or heaven and hell, they don't talk about that.
Right.
And even the word God, you don't even write it. And when I first came across Buddhism, in Judaism, they do not believe in representation of idols and bowing down to idols, because it's closer to Buddhism than any other, even though it's a theistic religion.
Right.
And when you get into what they used to call the secret tradition, which is
right.
Kabbalah, okay?
Right.
Now it's being, whatever, it's like New Age stuff, but really it was a secret essence of tradition, like Vajrayana is.
In Buddhism,
Of life after life in Judaism, which kind of, I remember making prostrations, and I was not confused, but I still go, because I was raised in a kind of strict, not strict, but pretty strict, not on outside looking, with stuff that I think stays with you.
Right.
It's not like I can take that out and
Sure,
just pop
sure.
to Buddhism, and not in the West
No.
anyway.
And I think it's really important just to acknowledge again that there's a lot of profundity to many traditions that we might not know. And that's why I always say, preface it with, I don't really know all the details of all these traditions, and to really never in any way disparage other traditions. Because if people go to that tradition and find something useful, whether it be Islam or whether it be Judaism, Hinduism, any ism or whatever, that we can rejoice in that people have gone there and found something useful that they can do with their lives, and a message that helps them to be better human beings in this world. How wonderful. How amazing. Yeah. So, it's not the same as Buddhism, you mean?
No, I said it's all kind of the same.
Yeah. It's all the same. I didn't hear what you said. Okay, yeah.
When it starts to get real
Yeah.
organized, like when even Buddhism gets organized,
right.
Catholicism organized, and Judaism gets organizations of.
Yeah, and then you get more.
Then you get more
people with
get secular.
different ideas and everything,
theirs is
and
the
yeah.
best.
Yeah, that's where it all comes in. So this is the first thing that makes our actions more powerful, that kind of gives a greater potential for merit. And again, that already sets the stage for why we're engaging in this whole thing. You know, the whole discussion tonight is revolving around the idea that we want to achieve our greatest potential for the benefit of others. So when we bring that motivation to our actions, that's the first step in making sure that our actions are going to be very powerful, that we'll be able to fulfill this side of it, which, as I said, affects this side of it, our wisdom, and our ability to move along the path and generate the realizations that we need to. The second one is the power of the object. And this refers to certain objects of our actions being more powerful. So this is outside of ourselves, but it's not completely separate from ourselves, but rather our recognition that certain objects do take on a more prominent role for us. Now this is one that maybe a little bit, might require a little bit more explanation. So remember when I talked about the two ways that Buddhas manifest, they've got their own personal experience of this Dharmakaya, this wisdom mind. And then that wisdom mind takes the form of Rupakaya, form bodies. Well, what they say is that one of the most powerful ways in which Buddhas are able to manifest to help us, I mentioned this briefly earlier, is in the form of our teachers, our gurus, our lamas. So in this tradition in particular, we try to hold the view as much as we can that those beings who we see as our gurus, not somebody who comes in and says, oh, I'm Guru so-and-so, or whatever, that puts that out there from their side, but beings who from our side we make that connection with and we feel are really important beings in our lives to help us to develop spiritually, that we try to hold a pure view of them, to think that they are the Buddhas manifesting in that way. And to some degree it makes sense that they could potentially be Buddhas manifesting in that way, because if we look at the idea that there are these enlightened minds that are trying to appear in forms to help us, well, how are they appearing in this world? Are they appearing as our political leaders? Well, we would hope that they would. It would be wonderful if we had these enlightened beings in charge of our governments and what have you in all the various countries in the world. Chances are, though, they're not going to be that involved in politics. Maybe they'll be here or there. Are they going to be our business leaders, corporate heads, and what have you? Well, there too. Maybe not. You know, those are very influential positions. Maybe they are. It's hard to say. We don't know who's a Buddha. You all could be Buddhas, for all I know. I don't know who's a Buddha. The most likely place for Buddhas to show up is as spiritual guides, right? Because that's the main job that they're about. They want to guide people to enlightenment. They want to help them on their own journey. So it makes sense to think that the most likely candidate for being a Buddha in our lives are going to be those people who play the role of spiritual guides. And this is, I mean, Rinpoche, when he talks about this, feels like he can point out, oh, I'm not talking about me, but I better make sure you know I'm not talking about me in the least. You know, this is about those beings who maybe, again, play a more prominent role in our spiritual development. I'm just here as a Dharma instructor, just sharing what knowledge I have, which is quite limited. But these people who are in a more central role in our spiritual life, we're encouraged to see them as these manifestations of the Buddha. And it is actually said that they are the most powerful object of our actions. So when we are engaging in actions where we are holding the awareness of the Guru and trying to do actions towards the Guru that please the Guru, particularly following the Guru's advice or helping with the Guru's intentions. So for example, this center is sort of a part of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's vision for this world and for what is needed in this world. Also part of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's wishes, for that matter, because the two of them went to His Holiness to seek permission to go start teaching us crazy Westerners. You know? This is how the whole organization started back in India and Nepal in the late 60s, you know, and early 70s, was through these two kind beings, you know, deciding they were, and they actually, it's interesting, there's stories that they were looked down upon by a lot of their Tibetan cohorts, you know, other lamas and teachers and what have you, saying, why are you teaching those crazy hippies? Because it was mostly crazy hippies over in Nepal and India at the time. And they decided, you know, this was where their path lay, that there was karma there that would lead to these good results. So everything that, you know, every chair, every cushion, every bowl, every part of this center is a part of Rinpoche's mandala, if you will, or Lama Yeshe's mandala. That is part of serving them. by contributing to this organization, offering your time, your resources, whatever way that you can be involved. Just coming to this center is a way of supporting that. So when we hold those thoughts and make those strong intentions to be dedicated to our gurus, helping our gurus, not that our gurus, again, if they're fully enlightened beings, they don't need our help per se, but we are once more trying to align ourselves with the goals that the gurus have. The gurus, if they're Buddhas, want nothing more than for all beings to become enlightened. So when we dedicate ourselves more fully to the gurus, we are directly in line with that. So Rinpoche says, the highest or most powerful object is the virtuous friend, the guru or the lama. He says the Dharma connection makes the guru the most powerful object in your life. He says one virtuous friend or guru is a much more powerful object than numberless Buddhas. Why? Because that is that enlightened mind appearing in a form directly suited to you, directly contacting you, whereas all the other numberless Buddhas aren't appearing in that form. It's that form that we have in front of us that is an important component of our practice, an important part of developing our minds, because they are the being that is most concerned about our spiritual welfare. So I'm not trying to make this into, and I know people who are new to Buddhism might think it's a bit of, there was even a term that was a bit derogatory that was used for Tibetan Buddhism when it came out into the West. They called it Lamaism, because they seemed like there was just this overly focus on the lamas, the gurus. And lama and guru are the same word, just guru is Sanskrit and lama is Tibetan. But the idea here is that if there are, this once more goes to kind of completing the circle we started with the first point, our intention, bodhicitta. If there are Buddhas in the world, because we are dedicated to becoming a Buddha, so we can help other beings to become enlightened by appearing in those forms, if this is something we're dedicating ourselves to, then there have to be ways that Buddhas are doing this right now. You know, you're never parted from Buddhas. The Buddhas are constantly trying to help every one of us to become enlightened. So how are they doing that? They can be doing it, like I said, in a variety of forms, but the form in which they're most in line with what a guru is trying to accomplish, with what a Buddha is trying to accomplish, is in the form of our teachers, in the form of those spiritual guides, virtuous friends, those who are dedicated to helping us. So this is said to be the most powerful object. So anything you do, and I mean, they're not, you can certainly offer resources to the gurus. It's a wonderful way to fulfill the guru's wishes. But it's not all about money. I mean, again, Rinpoche is very amazing. He'll receive these offerings. For example, the retreat that's done sometimes annually, but oftentimes every other year up in North Carolina. Everybody at the end goes up and makes all these monetary offerings to him, this whole stack of envelopes. And he just says, oh, give these to the center to do this project or whatever. He doesn't think about, oh, you know, I need to buy a new car or whatever. He doesn't go combing through all the offerings and take what he wants for himself. He's just very much just a conduit of that money coming in and just going right out. So this is a good sign of, you know, someone who's highly advanced and, you know, shows that regard for others so easily. So it's not just about the monetary thing. This is one way we can definitely serve our gurus. The most important way that we serve our gurus is through our practice and following the advice of the gurus. So if you go to your teacher and you have that strong connection, you see them as a guru, and they say to you, oh, you really should meditate 30 minutes a day, you know, whatever, they give you some practice to do. Then the best way to serve them is to do that with that thought in mind. I need to follow the guru's advice. So I'm going to sit down and do my 30 minutes, or I'm going to do this practice, or I'm going to fulfill these particular requirements, whatever the thing is. And as we develop our minds greater and greater, we become more and more open to following the advice of the gurus, following the practices. There's these amazing, very inspiring stories like Milarepa. Some of you may have heard of Milarepa, the great Tibetan saint, who dedicated himself after a life of being involved in black magic and killing some 38 people or whatever. He totally transformed his life, so he became enlightened in that very lifetime through his dedication to his guru, Marpa. And Marpa was really tough on him. Marpa was like this, told him, you know, to build a 9-story tower out of all these rocks, and he built it all the way up, and then the Marpa tells him, now take it all down. He took it all down, and then he said, now build it all up again. He did this 3 times in order to kind of create that karma of following the guru's advice. I mean, we should be grateful we don't have gurus like this doing this to us, telling us to build nine-story structures or whatever. So,
But isn't that humility that he's learning?
it's the humility and him being very genuine and saying, okay, you've told me to do this, I'm not going to get angry, I'm not going to get upset, I'm just going to do it, following the guru's advice. Absolutely.
He knew what he needed to.
Yeah. And this is the thing, because he had committed those crimes in that life, he had a lot of heavy karma to overcome. But it's an inspiring story, because even somebody who went to that length, which most of us in the room, I would think, if not all of us, have never done even taking one life of one person. And I work in prisons where I do work with men who've taken the lives of other people. And they find Milarepa's story incredibly encouraging, because you can overcome all of that through positive potential, through aligning yourself with the Guru. So this is why in this second one, the power of the object, that the Guru is said to be the most powerful object. Now, everything that we have arranged here, as I mentioned, all these holy objects, we can think of them as inseparable from the Guru. Because if we think the Guru is the Buddha, well then these are all manifestations of the Buddha in terms of what the body of a Buddha would be like. The stupas, which are like this stupa is one of that white object in the corner there. There are smaller stupas up here. That's the enlightened mind of a Buddha. The texts that are up here, Dharma texts, they represent the enlightened speech of a Buddha. So when we come in, like Rinpoche says, when you come into a room like this, you should put your hands at your heart and say you're prostrating to your Guru in the form of all of these objects. That thought transforms that into a very powerful action, because you are connecting with the Guru. You're aligning yourself with that object. Now, just to point out that we do have other objects that are more powerful to us as well. While the Guru is emphasized as the most powerful, the other objects that also play a role would be, for example, the next highest thing would be Buddhas. Of course, if a Buddha were to be here, manifesting, that would be a pretty powerful object. Bodhisattvas, which are the beings who have cultivated that deep bodhicitta in their mind, that are on their way to becoming a Buddha. And then other people who have achieved liberation, what are called foe destroyers or arhats, as well as those who have developed some realization in this life of emptiness, for example. The ordained Sangha would be next. Those who hold ordination. Venerable Tendrin, who's a nun here, will be doing the teachings. She's the resident teacher here. She'll start again next week, next Thursday. She is a powerful object for us, because by wearing the robes of a nun, she represents all the vows that the Buddha bestowed upon those disciples that were ordained. So she's a very powerful object by virtue of that. After ordained folk are our parents. Our parents are very powerful objects for us. Why? Because they gave us this body, this life. And then after that would be other ordinary people that we would relate to. So
What about center directors?
they're very powerful objects by being part of the Guru's mandala. Yeah, they don't specify them directly, but I would say that, yeah, they're pretty powerful. But anyway. So it's important to kind of, I don't want to make this sound like we have to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to our actions, but there's a bit of that flavor to this. It doesn't mean then that we sit there and go, okay, well then I can only give anything to my Guru, so that if you have somebody starving on the street who asks you for money, and you say, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm saving all my money to give it to my Guru, I can't give you any money. If that person is appearing in front of you and you have the resources to help them, then you should help them. And you can think of them as being your Guru. They may be your Guru. They may be a manifestation of a Buddha that's appearing in that form to, encourage you to practice generosity. So don't think that this kind of setting this out and saying, oh, this is a more powerful object than this, and that's more powerful than this, and so on, that you need to just stay up in the upper quadrant and leave behind all the other beings. Like when I'm home every day, I go out in the morning to put birdseed out for the birds. That's why I use that example. But if you go out there with mind of bodhicitta and think that this is about an offering to the Guru, that you want to, please the Gurus by helping all sentient beings, well then you are creating unbelievable merit by just putting that birdseed out on the ground or in a feeder or whatever. Yeah, Lama.
When you said that, I was thinking of this little tiny, we call them no-see bugs. Okay.
No, see 'em.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no-see or whatever they're called. And the only times I'm starting to recognize with my mind
Mhm.
that I'm not thinking good intentions is when I go to the bug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you actually have.
Like, I couldn't see it, but I didn't want them in my bath. I was one. I didn't want it in my bathroom.
Right.
And I don't know how I can see with glasses on them without. How I saw this, like,
No,
little
see 'em.
tiny thing, yeah. And it was like it wasn't a thought, oh, I don't want. It just like my finger went like that.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh my God, you know, but I realized how,
How
your
impulsive,
mind,
yeah.
every second,
Mhm.
like what we're talking about, positive intention, is, it's very difficult from
Sure.
moment to moment to moment, because if you have to think about it, it's
Yeah.
already gone by.
And this is why, I mean, we can say mind training is essential. We could call everything the Buddha teaches mind training, because if we don't train our minds, then we don't change those impulsive behaviors.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot to change it. That's why we do use those terms of like being under the control of our karma and our delusions, because it feels like that, which just takes over and we're immediately doing something without even thinking about it. So it takes a while to change it. So again, be easy on ourselves in that process, and know that on this other side, you know, earlier I was talking about how we're going to mostly focus on positive karma and meritorious actions. On the side of the negative karma and those destructive actions, they can all be purified. It's again a very powerful technique that's set out in Buddhism to help us to remove the potency of all those things, lessen it at least.
And also, I wanted to bring up when you were saying the virtuous friend, or when Geshe, we had a Geshe here for
Mhm.
close to 15 years, and he would always remind people, because everybody was asking, where do I find my teacher? And he would instruct it, he says, be careful, be very careful, because once that connection or you request, you know, he said, be prepared.
Sure.
You know, he was the disciplinarian at Sarah J.
Uh-huh.
So he was explaining how, like, to discipline, like 1,200
Uh-huh.
young monks
Sure.
and not have anger arise. And then when my particular person, I chose as one of, not chose, but chronically commit as one of my spiritual guides, when they told me that the whole world was messed up all because of me, and they're pointing in my face, and like, I sat there and all I did was cry. I don't want to be a Buddhist, I knew like 10 years ago. But I knew, like, it was different than my mother saying that when I was a kid. It was very hard to have, you know, whether it was my pride, whether it was my patience, you know, I cried, but, you know, after there was offering tea and whatever, while they were staying at my home, but it was,
You were able to get to a different place with it. Yeah.
well, you know, because I believe that the teacher is only there
Right.
for your
Yeah.
benefit. I
Yeah.
really believe it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the way I brought up my son and
Sure.
yelled at him, I got angry.
Yeah. No, and this is where I think we have to recognize that that is a very special connection that we're talking about, as you're pointing out, and one that will require us that when you enter into that, which again is something you do voluntarily. You don't sit there. A guru is not like inflicted upon you, you know. And somebody says, knock, knock, you know, I'm your guru now. Step aside. I'm going to take charge. You know, no. You have to make that connection. And when you feel that there's something there that's genuine, then you rely upon that. You keep that very much intact. And so then it does cause you to reflect differently when they say things or do things in terms of what do I need to learn from that.
I see.
Yeah, it can often be a bit on the wrathful side.
Yeah.
So yeah, even one teacher says that be careful who you choose as your guru, because you're going to end up just like them. You know, so that's an important thing to follow too, is just to find kind of what embodies for you what you want to develop into, what you want to become. And that may take some checking up. Again, I'm not going to go into the whole teachings on finding a guru, and that's part of Discovering Buddhism, Module 4 of Discovering Buddhism. And they go into the 10 things that are on your shopping list when you're guru shopping, that you're looking for ideally. And it's good to keep those things in mind because, once more, you want to have that foundation of really knowing that you checked up and found somebody who meets those requirements, but also somebody who, as I said, you feel that karmic connection with, that you feel your heart open with. That's how Lama Yeshe described a root guru as the teacher that makes your heart explode. It's kind of a nice way of thinking about it. Somebody who really just causes that type of a thing. So that's the second of these, is to understand that different objects of our actions have different power to them, but especially emphasizing this idea of the guru. And as much as possible to see holy objects as the same as the guru is one thing Rinpoche was emphasizing at the Light of the Path retreats that some of you have been to. The third one is actually called the power of the subject, meaning ourselves, the person who is engaged in the action. Now, what does that mean? We already talked about our intention of bodhicitta, so this is more whether you yourself as a practitioner of Buddhism hold vows or not. And vows are kind of an interesting thing. Vows can help us to create unbelievable merit. So let's use the example. One of the main negative actions that is emphasized in Buddhism that we want to avoid is killing, is to refrain from killing. So over here on the positive side, we have this simple, it's not so simple sometimes, but this act of refraining from killing, not killing. And we could even take that to a degree of calling it protecting life, even doing what we can. So for example, if you had an ant that had gotten into a puddle of water in the summer or something, and you could see that it was drowning, and you got a little leaf and you rescued the ant from that water and put it out on the ground, that would be taking this act of not killing even to a greater degree, even more meritorious, because you're also protecting life when you see it in danger. So let's say you just decide that someday you hear these teachings like tonight or whatever, and you go, okay, Buddhism holds that there's some really powerful negative karma if I kill. I'm going to make a more concerted effort to not kill, to at least go to that degree of refrain from killing mosquitoes and no-see-ums and all these various creatures that are around us. Certainly don't kill any human beings. Let's avoid that one as a given. But, do what we can to avoid this other type of killing. So there's very powerful karma right there, because you yourself as the subject of this act are making a decision to not kill. But it's said that you only really get you do get some positive potential by thinking that, but the most important thing comes when you're tested, when the mosquito lands in your hand, and you go, oh, that's right, you're getting ready to swat it, and you go, oh, that's right, I'm trying to practice not killing this. So maybe you don't let it sit there and eat up your blood or something. You blow it off your hand or something. Maybe a few mantras. You can do a Mani Padme Hum and blow it off your hand. But you don't kill it. You refrain from killing it. So how wonderful. The little mosquito gets to live out its little mosquito life. Probably is only going to live for another day or two anyway. They don't live very long. And you didn't take its life. And it values its life in the same way we value our lives. It's just a creature that continues to want to do what it's doing, find its own little measure of happiness, which it gets from sucking blood and mating with other mosquitoes and whatever else it does.
But
Okay.
if you blow it away from your hand, it didn't get the opportunity to suck your blood.
And if you're feeling really generous, you can maybe let it suck your blood. But we know nowadays too. There's also a lot of things that mosquitoes carry. So maybe not such a. But nonetheless, Lama Zopa, there's stories of Lama Zopa where in one evening, he went out at dusk when the mosquitoes were out, and he took down the top of his robe so that the mosquitoes could all land on his back and kind of feed for a while. Then he sort of shook his robe so they would all fly away and went inside. I heard from somebody that Lama Yeshe once told him, oh, this was a very good thing to do, but be careful because other beings rely upon you too. Anyway, I heard that from somebody. I should know. Venerable Urbini is always like, who did you hear that from? Where did you get that from? And I don't remember who told me that, frankly. But so I think we have to, if we're really moved and we feel like it's really important for us to help that little mosquito have the nourishment that he wants, what's one little drop of blood really when it comes down to it? Sure, you have the little welt there and the mosquito bite that itches like crazy afterwards, but put some lavender on it. Lavender
I remember
helps.
when Obama was president, and he was doing that, an interview with somebody, and there was a mosquito, and he was like, "Zzz," and like, none of you remember?
Yeah.
And the news it wasn't about the interview, the whole thing was about, did you see President Obama? Like, because the mosquito, he couldn't,
Yeah, couldn't get it.
it was when he first got it,
Yeah.
it was funny.
So, yes.
Sometimes little critters come into the house and I take
Uh-huh.
them outside.
Ah,
And
good.
then I wonder, the thought comes to my mind, am I placing them in a good place or a bad place?
Yeah,
And that's why I said about, the mosquito, but
yeah.
sometimes I wonder, am I doing the right thing also?
What's your name again?
I'm Patty.
Patty, yeah.
I haven't been here for
Yeah.
a whole time, but I do
Yeah.
come to the
Okay.
center.
Yeah. You look familiar to me, but maybe it was another visit or something.
Yeah.
So Patty, I mean, I think we always have to go back to our intention. You know, sometimes when we have creatures in the house, our intention in getting them out of the house might not be the best, you know, because we don't want them. Sometimes we have to examine that and say, well, we also might have another part of our mind that also doesn't want them to be in danger, because if they're in our house and we're doing various things, and they can lose their life, or if they're insects that actually feed on things that are outside of our house that aren't in our house, well, they're going to die in our house because they don't actually have the outdoors that they will survive in and what have you. So you have to maybe check up on your motivation and see that. But then, yeah, be careful in where you place them. But after that happens, then I think we have to let go of it and not be too concerned about, did we do what was really best for that creature by putting it there? In the winter in Santa Fe, you guys don't really have much of a winter here, but in Santa Fe, it's cold and it snows, and you don't really want to be throwing insects that you find in the house out into that cold weather, because they probably won't survive so well. They've come into the houses in order to survive. So I let the spiders find their little corner of the house and build their web and do whatever they're going to do, or just try not to interfere with them. But so we do have to take some care in doing that. I mean, it reminds me of a story, one practice that Lama Zopa encourages people to do, especially if you're dealing with any kind of health problems, difficulties, is what's called animal liberation. And animal liberation is where you let animals go that you've rescued who would have experienced death. So like in Santa Fe, what we tend to do, because it's hard to find larger animals and then to release them in a place where they're going to be taken care of. So we use earthworms. We go out and we get earthworms, and we do all these rituals with them and mantras and what have you, and then people put them in their garden, and they make sure that they're their compost pile as much as possible, take care of them in that way. So anyway, I got on that story, but there was another example that was really the main one that I wanted to share, which is this woman who said that she lived in India for a while, and she was trying to liberate this mouse that had been in her house, that of course she didn't want to continue to have in her house. And so she took the mouse out into a field somewhere, I don't know where this is, outside of Dharamsala or something, and she went out there. And she said, they were so happy because the mouse went scampering off, and she thought, oh, how good, I've given it this nice little home outdoors. And then immediately a bird swooped down and picked up the mouse. That was it. The poor little critter just died within moments after liberation. Because she'd done this practice of, reciting mantras and all that. But, you just have to say that again, we can't save all beings from having their lives shortened. We can't save all of them from the danger of death. We can't save all of them from all the various things that are going on. So, yeah, really.
So I'm thinking it's the intention, your intention that you have
Yes.
in taking the action.
In combination with as much as possible using your wisdom to release those animals, those creatures, into a place where they won't be harmed. Now, again, we don't have perfect control of it. I think this woman thought she was being quite nice in the locale that she had put this mouse, but the mouse, at least it got all the mantras and all the stuff that she did beforehand, before it was liberated. But
I had a similar story that I shared with Tender in class. I took the spider out, right, from the cup,
Uh-huh.
and shaking the cup out, and as the spider is hitting towards the ground, a lizard comes up and grabs the spider before it hits
Right.
the ground. And I was devastated, and I was like, Tendrin, you know what? She said, first of all, that was the spider's karma,
Right.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to feel guilty about that, but you have to check out your intention, your motivation,
Exactly.
which is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't acting benevolently towards the spider, I was acting out of my own self-cherishing
Yeah.
and getting it out of the house.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we get quite clear, in this, what is our mind actually doing when we're trying to free those beings from being in our house? When maybe, they're quite comfortable in our house. Some of them. I mean, I actually got bit by a spider in my house that ended up getting quite infected. I think it was one of those brown recluse.
Yeah, a woman last week almost
Yeah.
died in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Her house was infested, she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
comatose.
So you do have to, I mean, it's just, we can't be like this kind of naive person that just kind of allows all this to happen and not thinking anything about it. Like there was a woman, there's rattlesnakes in New Mexico too. There's a woman up in Taos who, there's a rattlesnake under her bed. She's not going to like sit there and say, oh, well, perfectly fine, the rattlesnake will just live there and it'll eventually leave if it wants to, I'm not going to put it outside. No, she figured out a way to get it outside and got it out of her house. So anyway, so going back to this third one. The first one again was our intention. The second one, the object. Here it's the subject. You gain more merit, going back to this example I was using, of the person who simply refrains from killing at those times when they don't want to kill, when they're tempted to kill. That's good merit. But if you take the vow not to kill, this is only one of what are called the lay vows. If you take the vow not to kill, then whether there's creatures on your hand or in your room or wherever, it doesn't matter. You can be asleep even, and you're accumulating merit of holding that vow. It's the power of a vow. When you take a vow, it kind of creates this energy in your mind because you're making the commitment in front of the person who's bestowing the vow upon you that you are not going to kill. You're going to refrain from killing for the rest of this life. So it has this power. It's like the clock starts ticking then, and you just keep creating merit round the clock. As long as you hold that vow purely. Oh, there's a little guy there. Oh, money, pay me home.
Well, cockroach,
Yeah.
we have tons of them here.
Yeah. I remember when I was visiting New Orleans once, my friend who lived there said, actually, you don't want to eat in a restaurant that doesn't have cockroaches because if they don't have cockroaches, you don't know what they're using to kill them. It's probably like pretty toxic and you don't want to eat the food.
That's probably positive because.
It's getting some imprint. Will money pay me home? Will money pay me home? So anyway, this is a perfect example, right? So it doesn't have to be a bug appearing in front of you that you refrain from killing for you to get the merit. If you're holding the vow not to kill, you're collecting it even when you're asleep. So there are the 5 lay vows that anybody can hold, and of course there's vows of ordination that monks and nuns hold, which are in the hundreds when you take full ordination. And then there's also the bodhisattva vows that you can hold, and the tantric vows that you hold if you take a particular Vajrayana initiation. Vows are very powerful because they have that ability to create that energy in your mind by virtue of what you've done in taking that vow, that as long as you hold the vow, keeps the clock turning on creating more merit. All right?
I have a question.
Sure.
When you were just saying that, I've taken quite a few vows,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes in my mind, I'm very rigid. Like it goes to an all or nothing.
Right.
And I have trouble with this because, when I know the prayers for, renunciation or
Purification?
yes, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Purification. However, if I notice something or a vow that's broken, just by saying purification mantra doesn't actually do it for me. Like I kind of, I talk a lot, so it's like, blah, 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 blah. Unless I really change my behavior,
Sure.
I don't know, and I have a lot of trouble with this because then I have to hold myself into perfection. It's a ridiculous standard.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe
But-
you had some
but-
help for it. I mean, it's.
But that goes back to that fourth element of the four opponent powers for purification, which is making a resolve to refrain from the action for some period of time. And this is where, again, I think we all can work with that as best as we can. So if we have something we're really inclined to do, like kill the no-see-ums or whatever it might be, that we know we're going to be tempted to do, we make a concerted effort to move in that direction. We don't say, I'm never going to do that again, because that's pretty tough to uphold with our current state of our minds. So we make the determination to refrain from it for some period of time. Now again, with vows, it's slightly different, because we're not supposed to have this idea, I'm holding this vow until I next break it, or for 24 hours or whatever. So Venerable Robina, when she teaches on this, she doesn't say that it should be just like the way we do it with other actions that we're purifying. When we do our vows, we should, even if we know that at some point we're going to break them, always make the determination that we are holding them for the duration of that vow. So she actually encourages that at that step, when we get the fourth opponent power of resolve, that we renew our vows very strongly. That you say, and I once more reiterate that I will hold the vows to not kill, or whatever vows we've taken, for the rest of this life, or even till Buddhahood, which is what you do when you say the Bodhisattva vows.
Right.
Even if you know you're going to break them. It sounds strange because it makes it sound like you're lying in a sense, because that's the whole logic of making a resolve only for some short period of time on those things that you want to work on. But I think we have to acknowledge what the vows are really about, which are about upholding them over an entire lifetime, or even beyond, all the way to Buddhahood. So she was very adamant the one time that she was going through the vows with us to say, no, you have to make the determination that you're not going to commit them again. Period.
Chodo Rinpoche, one of my teachers, he gave me a suggestion.
Okay.
Another way was personal for me to think about when you say the rest of your life, that you don't know when death will come, so it's like
Sure.
every moment. But I don't know if it's my upbringing or it's just very different. Like with that boat today, there was absolutely no reason. First of all, how I could see it. What's amazing? It kind of shocked me after.
Sure.
Because I don't usually do that. And like this little, that's what they call them.
Right.
And for me, who I'm almost blind without my glasses or with them, and I saw this, and
So-
that there's reaction there that's so deep.
But again, also keeping in mind that with the lay vow of not killing, it's really only broken from the root if you kill a human being. It's
Yeah.
weak, and it's a transgression if you kill an insect. So we can still reassert our determination to hold the vow purely, even though, because most of us won't kill a human being in this life, hopefully. The guys that I work with in the prison, many of them had no intention of killing a human being in this life either, just like that. But,
you never know who you turn
Yeah.
into.
So again, I think it's okay that we just once more reassert, as Venerable Robina's advice was, or even what Choden Rinpoche is saying, every moment could be our last, so we're just going to make every moment infused with that determination to hold the vow purely. And then we just do the best that we can, because we're still going to be maybe having transgressions of our vows, but hopefully we're not going to break them from the root. Breaking them from the root is really quite specific.
Right.
And for killing, it's killing a human being. For lying, it's telling a lie about one's spiritual realizations. For sexual misconduct, it's having adultery, or coerced sexual behavior. And then for stealing, it's stealing something of great value. And then for drinking alcohol, I think that one is kind of interesting. The way it's worded in here, there's no breaking of the root. You just are always getting a transgression, it seems, any time that
I
you...
forgot, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Because, that's what I said, my mind goes in all or nothing, and I forget about the transgression.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like all or nothing, you're good, you're bad, and
The
that's
vows
it.
are in the prayer book?
Yeah. Actually, if those of you who are curious about these, it's in the Taking Refuge in the Three Jewels, page 117. It's where they laid out the lay vows. The Bodhisattva vows and Tantric vows aren't in here. You can study the Bodhisattva vows. Tantric vows you can't study ahead of time,
Thank you.
but this shows how they're lost from the root. As I said, the first 4 are where they are defined in a very specific way. And the 5th one, drinking alcohol and intoxicants, that one is not really, other than on the next page where you said, I said a transgression, sometimes they call it a downfall, page 118. You don't lose the vow from the root, but you receive a downfall. So anyway, okay, so let's pull this back to the merit discussion so we can finish off, because we've got 10 minutes left. This is the 3rd way that we create incredible merit. Even one teacher in this tradition, I think it's Venerable Thupten Dundrup, this Australian monk, he said we might even question, if we've been practicing Buddhism for a while and we haven't taken vows, we might really question what's holding us back from doing that. Because we tend to think of vows as being like some burden that we have to carry around, but it's actually an incredible liberating thing, because it defines very clearly what you need to do. It like defines your path for you. Gives you the boundaries and the guidelines for which you to achieve liberation, which are what the 5 lay vows are about, and enlightenment, which are what Bodhisattva and Tantric vows are about. So we should be grateful that we have the opportunity to practice vows. But vows are a serious thing to engage in. So again, study those that you can ahead of time. Try these on for a while. See, what is it like to live my life with just one of these vows? In fact, I heard, this was again somebody maybe paraphrasing Rinpoche, and I don't remember who, but they said that Rinpoche said once in a group of FPMT, I think directors and that if the whole organization existed and only one person stopped killing, it would be worth it to have the whole organization just for that one person to stop killing. So that's pretty powerful. I mean, to say what the merit of stopping killing is. So try these on. Try to live your life by, not killing, not taking what hasn't been given, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not telling lies. The drinking alcohol is not by its nature a non-virtuous thing. It's the doorway through which we do engage in a lot of non-virtue. Right? You have a few too many and then suddenly you're pretty loose in a lot of ways, and it's just, all right. So, it's just, one of those factors. So those are the first 3. The 4th one is actually what's sometimes called the power of the action or the substance of the action. And this is getting behind the fact that some things that are involved in some specific actions are more powerful than others. So for example, one of the examples that's frequently used is generosity, giving. So one way that we give and that we frequently talk about giving is giving material things to others, like what I was talking about earlier, the homeless person who needs some money so they can eat, and we give them the money or we buy them the food, whatever, so we're doing something that helps them in a material way. That's very powerful giving. The most powerful substance we can give, though, is the Dharma, are these teachings that help sentient beings. It's a bit like that old, as much as I hate the content of that old phrase, you can feed or give a man a fish, feed them for a day, teach a man to fish, feed them for life. It's a horrible sentiment, because we don't really want people going around killing fish either. But nonetheless, it's a similar type of idea here. You can help somebody by giving them something material that relieves their suffering in the moment, but how much more powerful if you can give them something that helps them to relieve their suffering forever, helps them to achieve greater satisfaction. So now we don't all have the opportunity to teach Dharma to others, but we have ways that we can transmit the Dharma in our own relationships with people who are going through difficulties. If you have somebody who's breaking up with somebody and you think that you have some words of advice that you've learned by being in Buddhist teachings that might be helpful, you can ask them. I've got some things that I think I'd like to share with you that might be helpful if you're open to that. And they can say, no, thank you very much. I'm fine with relying upon my own, resources. Or, yes, I'd like to hear that. And then you can offer it. You don't even have to say, oh, these are Buddhist teachings. I mean, I'm not saying you should do it by stealth, but I'm saying some people will have a reaction if you put a label on it. You can just simply say, well, these are some things that I've been learned through some reading and teachings I've gone to, and I'd be happy to share them with you. People can say yes or no. Buddhism isn't into proselytizing. Like I said the other day, we don't go around like door to door with our prayer books and knock, and say, could I talk to you about the Buddha today? This isn't what we do. It's not that we're not concerned about all these beings, it's just that we recognize that there's better ways to do things. And if people have a karma to come into the room here and hear some teachings, and maybe they just come for the one set of teachings and they leave, well then that's fine. They got those teachings, how wonderful. We're not into like numbers and building it up into a mega Buddha center and whatever, That isn't what we're about, So the idea here is that there are certain things that have more power to them because of what we're involved in. Things around the Dharma, things around helping sentient beings in more ultimate ways are always more powerful than the more temporal ways. But that doesn't mean, again, that we don't help in the more temporal ways. So the homeless person comes up to you and they ask for money, and you've got plenty of money in your pockets, and you say, I could give you some money, but that's only going to feed you for today. Why don't I sit you down and give you some teachings on karma, and then you'll be, that's not what the person, I mean, sure, if you want to spend time with that homeless person and maybe find if there's an entry point for you to talk about this stuff, that's great. I mean, seriously, homeless people, in my experience, need more people to pay attention to them as human beings rather than just handing them things. I mean, at the homeless shelter we have in Santa Fe, I can't tell you how much the people appreciate just having someone to sit down and talk to them and relate to them as a human being and acknowledge them as a human being rather than somebody on the road that they toss money at or something. So that's Dharma in itself. Showing kindness to others is generosity, is kindness, is a very powerful act. So know that the substance of your action is something to pay attention to. Not that we become exclusive and only doing it a particular way. So, any questions on any of those four? Oh, one other thing about this substance of the action. It also is said that something we do more continually becomes more powerful if it's a positive action. So that's why we're encouraged, to meditate every day or to do a certain practice every day, to recite mantras every day, is because they become more powerful with frequency. It builds a momentum behind them. Whereas something we engage in only once, and then we don't do it again for a number of years, well then it doesn't have much power to it. This is, of course, how we change our minds, is by doing things more frequently. So we can see that it does have greater power by virtue of that. So any questions on these four? Kind of how do you make your merit, get more merit for your money or something? Yes.
The question is, how do you, if you need help, okay, how do you receive the help without, I'm going to compare this to me in the U.S. and in India. In India, when I was there with my son was 2 years old, I became homeless, sleeping on the beach, and instinctively, the Indians, the Tibetans, knew right away. It wasn't only, like this. They knew I needed food, they knew I needed shelter, because I was, whether I was a baby or not, and they provided that without their big eye. I didn't have to go, oh thank you, and it, until I was able to make me and my son stable, they just kept it wasn't like a one-time deal and you're forgotten. And I find very much in the United States, even when I was younger, like 13, 14, it's like if you don't show up, it's like you're not there.
You're neglected.
Yeah. And I see it even in Buddhist centers over and over, and in all, not only Buddhist centers, but just in our society.
Our society at large.
And so if you can't show up, then how do you receive the help that you actually need, that I think many people are willing to offer?
Sure.
That's what I'm
Well, and I think it's a good question because it does acknowledge the fact that it's not just kind of like from your own side. There are other factors, and this is where in Buddhism we're never ignoring the external stuff, but we're also acknowledging that the external stuff is still a product of our karma to a large degree as well. So I suppose that it all comes down to how do we create the karma to receive aid, even in the face of us not asking for that aid or putting it out there or showing up, whatever. And that gets to be a tricky thing, because once more, it's not that because in Buddhism we're never about saying then, well, but then how do I get other people to change so that they become kinder to me, or people like me, or whatever the case might be. It's like, how do I change myself so that I become part of the cycle of this helping this, facilitating this to be in our world? Because the way in which we behave is the way in which the world then behaves towards us. And we can change the world by just virtue of doing that continually. So I suppose it becomes our also needing to be sure that we pay attention to the needs of others in spite of them not being directly in front of us and present. It comes down to our holding them in our hearts and making sure we do what we can to reciprocate, if not physically, at least mentally.
Well, sometimes, through my own experience, I'm just wondering, sometimes I actually do think, I'm just talking, I can only talk from my experiences with studying Buddhism and living in the world, that actually physical things, because we do live in this world, we need food and to exist, that's a sort of given, it's not like the ultimate, it's kind of, they both, that sometimes a person, the physical needs are more important because the person might die.
Sure. Absolutely.
Without
Absolutely.
that.
So
I don't mean just
no,
say,
and I agree.
like, oh, that's their karma.
And that's, like I said, the homeless person who shows up and needs food in their belly. You don't sit there and try to give them a Dharma teaching that it's going to have a repercussion maybe way further down the line when their more immediate needs need to be met, or they could die on the street because they're not having their sustenance to be able to continue to be alive.
So let me answer from that example. If
Yeah.
you're a person serving food to homeless, okay, and you see the person, similar people, and you know them. Every day they're coming and, you're giving and they're receiving, and then you don't see somebody for a week or 2 weeks. Maybe it's this age of this century, but I've experienced when you don't see them, it's like
Sure.
people assume that they don't go looking for them, or they don't,
Yeah.
when it's on the radio.
No, I agree with you, but I guess I'm not still clear about what's a good answer to that, and maybe I don't have an answer to that, because I think once more we've created a society where that is maybe the given, and even, and I agree with you, in Dharma centers frequently, because this happens, you get a lot of people that come in and out of the doors of a place like this, or where I teach in Santa Fe, and sometimes people will be around for a while and then you don't see them, and it's not that we go try to find them in town and go up to their door and say, are you okay, and what have you. I mean, we can't always do that. But it's also part of our culture to maybe assume that people are okay unless they let you know they're not okay. But I don't know how to change that in our culture, and maybe it's at some level just the reality of the complex society that we have. If you were living in a little commune of 10 people, then you would know how to help somebody who isn't showing up for the meals or doing whatever, because you know where to find them, and that would be part of your communal responsibility. I think that at some level we've gotten so big in terms of our societies and what have you that it's very hard to take that level of personal responsibility. Not that it would be a wonderful thing if people did that.
But,
I'm not denying what you're saying, but I think it could be many other factors involved that make it very difficult for that level of attention to get there.
Well, I only bring this up, this awareness,
Yeah.
because I think as intention and motivation, as we talk about bodhicitta,
Sure.
it has to start from, you
Right.
can't go from the
Right.
urethral, like, okay, I'll wait because I mean,
Sure, I agree with
I
you.
mean, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I laugh at this. My neighbor, after I came out, I was in intensive care, she goes to me, oh, where'd you go this time? That Buddha place in California?
Right.
But, it's not because she's elderly, I mean, I'm there also.
Right.
But really I mean, I know her 20 years.
Right.
And she goes, oh, I haven't seen you.
Yeah. But
It's a weird.
But I can understand how that happens. I don't really feel like there's a fault on her side
No,
in
I'm
not
saying
knowing
there's
that.
a fault. I'm asking
Yeah.
how we as a community,
Yeah.
not
We
faulting,
need to
how
wrap
we as a
things up too, but
community can-
But I think it all comes down to, if we go back to this idea of what we're talking about tonight, merit and karma, and this idea that we create the world that we live in, well then we have to be models of that ourselves. That means that if we want that level of attention in our own lives because we see it would be useful, then we have to be modeling it to the world at large and doing that as much as possible ourselves. So that's the only way that change happens, is by actually each of us becoming an instrument of doing something different. If we want a society that's more caring and concerned, then we have to be caring and concerned. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can tackle fixing that type of thing, but to understand that this is what we mean by karma, and this is even what we mean by merit. Merit increases the favorable things in our lives. Not that we want it all to be favorable. We want it to be favorable mostly because we want to be sure that we can use this life well. If any one of us were to have, something horrible happen to us where we were suddenly, incapable of using this life well because we lost all of our resources, or we, lost our mental faculties, or whatever the case might be, well then we'd see how much we'd be challenged. So that's why we want things well, is we can use this life meaningfully. We can use this life to benefit others. Are you going to say something more, Tracy?
I was going to say, some people may want to be left alone. Like, sometimes I just want to be left alone if I don't show up. I'm tired and I just...
So again, yeah, there's different factors of it, but I see what you're saying from your perspective, and how when you were in a situation, it would be nice if people were attentive enough to come but again, not everybody's got that capacity, and we got a culture, again, that doesn't necessarily always support that. But it's wonderful if you can...
We sort of rely on our family,
Uh-huh.
our close unit to check
Yeah.
up on us.
And sometimes people don't have that family necessarily, or have limited resources there. But this is a side note, and then we really do have to end tonight because we're over time. But I do believe that in Buddhist communities, there's a much greater need for us to look at how to support each other. And this is something actually we started in Santa Fe, was Geshe Sherab encouraged us to develop a group that we call the Dharma Care Group, which are people who've all formed a little phone network and text network and everything to be on top of anytime anyone in our community has been in hospital or is going through a difficult time, just needs some people to get groceries for them, whatever the case might be. This happens, I mean, in a lot of Christian communities, it's in place. The people are showing up with the pot roast and the casserole dish and whatever. I mean, there's a lot of that's already there. And you kind of take it for granted that it should be there. But I agree with you, and if that's kind of the gist of what you're talking about, well then, absolutely, I think that we have a long way to go to embody that in all of our communities. But slowly, I mean, there's nothing stopping any one of us from saying, let's start this here, let's do something similar here. And even if you can't take part in it fully, even if you can't be a major player behind it, nothing wrong with kind of getting the ball rolling. Because I think it is important. In Santa Fe, we mostly did it around the fact that we've got an aging community there. It's getting to be, Santa Fe's huge retirement community now. I think it'll be by 2020, the statistics say, will be 45% of the population will be over 65. Here we are in Florida, where it's probably maybe even more than that. So if you got a lot of folks that are retired moving into that part of their lives, a lot more people that need help. So we have to have something in place. So I think it's really good to model that where we can. So, I meant to spend more time talking about a lot of the other practices that are involved in merit making, but this gives the gist of it. If we can really focus on those 4 things, having a really powerful intention, bodhicitta, as much as possible working with objects that are really helpful for our minds, and for our development, such as our gurus. Also paying attention to where we can, taking vows to increase the power from our own side, and then also the substance of our action, what it is that we're doing. It's incredibly positive and powerful merit. And again, the whole goal of merit is so that we can be of greatest benefit to others. So let's dedicate now with those thoughts. Go to page 235. We're just going to recite this one prayer, the very first prayer there, thinking that through the power of what we've done here tonight, may this be the cause for us to be able to fulfill that accumulation of merit and wisdom to achieve Buddhahood, so we can help others to do the same. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And then dedicate also for the good health and long lives of our precious gurus. Even if these are Buddhas appearing in our lives, we still have to create the causes from our side to have them in this world. So think very strongly that you have created this power, this positive potential that ripens into precious teachers being in your life and in the lives of all beings. And then also think about any others you want to dedicate this positive potential for, to help to relieve their suffering, bring them to peace and happiness. Just send this positive potential out to those beings and to all beings. May all beings experience true peace and happiness through our efforts here tonight. Okay, thank you all very much. Sorry I went a little bit over. You get more for your time. More merit.
And I agree, and we should start the Dharma Care Center, Mama, and we will try to do that, okay?
Gain a lot of merit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the important thing too is as you become more known, I mean, to make sure that there's something that people can know that they also have to call from their side. You know, when there are issues or problems, call the coordinator of the Dharma Care Group and then let people know what it is that they need. That's another side of it, is
Yeah.
to recognize
Yeah,
that,
it's
you know, in our community, it's hard for people to always be on top of calling. They want to be, you know, that attentive.
Absolutely. So I just have a few announcements as it's Dawn's last few days. So tomorrow night is the Mosen Buddha Puja. John Morrell passed last Friday, so we are doing this in honor of him tomorrow evening at 7 and 9. And then Saturdays, full day teaching on finding peace and courage in challenging times. Sunday, conscious aging. Tuesday, intro to Green Tara with Jackie Keeley. And Thursday, discovering Buddhism from the beginning. And Sunday, August 5th, is Venerable Tenrin's birthday. So we are going to lunch at Casa Maya. And I need an RSVP list. So if you're interested in joining us for that, please let me know as soon as possible. Thank you all. And have a good